Hello and welcome to my channel Inch by Inch Art. So I grabbed this seashell and my polymer clay and some sand off the beach and decided that I'd make a little sea turtle beach scene. So I'm just going to use some Mod Podge, put it on really thick, and then put the sand on the Mod Podge and let it dry. This is going to be my little beach where my turtles are hatching. Now over to my polymer clay. I'm using a neon greenish color for my turtles. I'm going for a cartoonish cute style here. And fingers are my primary tool with this whole craft. I'm rolling out a small ball to be the head of one of the turtles and some flippers and some little hind feet. And now I'm making the shell. Once I've got the basic shape of the shell, which is going to be broader in the front and narrower in the back, I am using my silicone sculpting tool that is an angle sculpting tool, has a flat edge on it, to do all the lines and indents where the carapace, or the top of the turtle shell, would show the different plates. And I'm just pressing these in to give it a bit of texture and depth. And going around the outside with the same silicone sculpting tool to just do straight lines along all the edges. Now I'm lining up where my head and flippers will go. And I'm putting all of my little flippers in place, and I've added a tail, and I'm just placing them under the shell piece, and then I'm going to press down lightly so I don't put finger imprints into the top shell, but because the clay is a little bit tacky, it'll hold them in place. Then I just flip it over and use my silicone sculpting tool that's the cone tip to try and press the clay in a little bit to make it more secure. Here I'm using my Sculpey liquid bacon bond, and I'm just going to use this to help me put the head on. I don't want to squish the head, so I'm using this to help me ensure that the head is still round, but will stick securely once I bake this piece. Now that my full turtle is done, I'm moving on to eggshells. This is going to be a little hatchling on the beach situation. So I'm just taking a ball of white clay, rounding it out, pressing it into a little disc, and then using a round ball tool in the palm of my hand to make it an egg shape. And I'm just using little crumbs that I'm flattening with my fingers to be fragments of the shell that are broken that will be laying out on the beach. I do also make another turtle that's coming out of the shell, but I don't show making it. It's the same steps as the other one, only I only make a head with eyes and a flipper. So I'm just finishing up the turtle here. I've got 2 black balls of Sculpey that I've pressed on to be eyes, and now I'm using some brown to add some details. I decided that I didn't really want to paint this. I do use a tiny bit of paint, but I was trying to get away with not using any. I'm just using my small dotting tool and silicone sculpting tool to press all of these little pieces on. Here you can see the hatchling one, just a head and a flipper like I said. And I'm using some cheap acrylic paints in a dry brush form. So just putting a little bit on my paintbrush, rubbing it on a paper towel, and then using the excess paint that's left on the brush to do a very thin light coat of brown over the top of the shell. And now I'm going to use my E6000 glue to glue all my pieces down. I did bake all of these pieces before I painted them. Now moving on to my water. So I decided that I would mimic how I would paint an ocean. So I got several different colors of blue, some of which I mixed by hand. I've got a dark blue, a greenish blue, a very pale pastel blue, and I'm mixing them all together, but not so much that they fully blend. I want to try to keep it so that there's lines of different color to make it look more like water, and it'll get darker the further out it goes. As water gets darker, the deeper it is. And once I've got some bands, it doesn't look like much at the moment, but I flatten them down onto the shell and I start adding extra pieces on top that will be lighter and lighter to be my waves. So white will always go at the edges and light blue will be right behind it. And then I'm using one of my dotting tools to put in texture and to press in how the waves should look. So the white should always be a crest because it's the wake of a wave. The light blue should be coming up at an angle behind it. And then you can have your greenish blue and darker blues behind that. And I'm just putting worms of clay on for my white break of my waves. The texturing with the dotting tool also helps ensure that the colors are blended in together well and makes them look much more like water. I'm just finishing up some waves on the other side and using the same technique. Now I'm just using my cone-shaped silicone sculpting tool to roll quickly over the peaks of the breaks of the waves to make them look more like waves. So I've baked this piece again to cure my waves, and now I'm using my E6000 glue one last time, and I'm going to secure the magnet on the back of the shell. Here's my fridge with all my other magnets, and you can see it is done. I've made these several times, and I've been improving the way I make my waves. I think these came out pretty good. I'd like to use resin for it at some point. I was experimenting with it, but it's quite tricky because of the shape and slope of the shell and trying to get that lacing effect that you'd want for water with the white. That's it from me. I hope you enjoyed this. If you'd like to see more of me making my art, please like, follow, and subscribe.